Here we go!
This might sound like heresy to a lot of Mega Man purists out there who believe the only real Mega Man is one that's from the NES, but I didn't actually play an original Mega Man game until much later in my life. All of the Mega Man games I started off with were spin-offs. X and Battle Network were two of my favorites, and of these spin-offs was one that I absolutely adored when I was a kid, Mega Man 64. You know it had to be good if the series was still going strong after 63 titles. It had a cool world to explore, a lot of cool NPCs to talk to, fun upgrades for your Mega Buster, and rolling around at the speed of sound. But after reflecting on it, I had to wonder, is it just my nostalgia talking, or is the game as good as I remember? Unfortunately, I no longer have a copy of Mega Man 64, but I do have a copy of Mega Man Legends, which is the PS1 version that 64 was a port of, so that'll work. What's weird about my copy in particular is that I don't have the original case for it. Instead, I keep it in a case for Mega Man X5, except that I never owned X5, so why the fuck is it in this case? So I pop it into my PS2 and
covered by endless water. People are forced.
I am greeted by one of the most genuine and delightful opening monologues I have ever seen in a video game. This was the era of gaming in which fully voiced video games were just starting to become a regular thing, and any games who were fully voiced were either Fallout,
have done the things I have done in the name of progress and healing. It was madness.
or Resident Evil.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
Grim Fandango,
Oh, I'll be leaving here soon enough.
No thanks to dead and no commission low-life cases like yours, Menso.
or Mega Man X4.
Ah! No, this isn't happening! There's no reason for me to go on. What? What am I fighting for?
There was definitely a spectrum during that era, and most games fell pretty hard on one side or the other. So, keeping that in mind, honestly, I think this game actually holds up pretty damn well in this department. A couple of the performances were a little lackluster, but you also got some really great performances. In particular, Robert Smith and Carolee Larson as Teeselbon and Tronbon respectively give some pretty knockout performances, and any scene they have together has a pretty good chance of being one of my favorites in the game.
Hey, Trom, how do you stop this thing?
Oh, this? Like this!
But as I was saying, I love the passion and genuine sincerity the opening narrator delivers his monologue. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out who recorded it. If anyone can find that actor's name for me, I will love you forever. So you start the game, and we find Mega Man in the middle of some ruins, trying to get a large crystal known as a refractor. Over the radio, Mega Man is talking to a woman he refers to as Roll. As the narrator explained in the beginning, the world is covered by
endless water,
and everyone lives on small, various islands. A common occupation in this world is something called a digger. Diggers explore ancient ruins scattered throughout the world to find these refractor things. Refractors are used as energy sources for various machines, and diggers sell them to make money. In addition, the diggers have support people called spotters, individuals who keep an eye on the sensors, update them on their progress, and all the other vague stuff that the guy in the chair does that saves the hero's ass without ever being thanked for it. So you begin the game playing as Mega Man on one of these very digs, and you'll probably notice something pretty much right away. The game controls like ass. The camera and movement controls are difficult to really get a hang of because this game came out pre-DualShock, which means there are no analog sticks for you to use for movement to camera. Instead, you move forward, left, right, and back with the directional buttons and control the camera with R1 and L1 buttons to give it a pseudo-tank control kind of thing. And while, yeah, it is a bit of a pain at first, you do eventually get used to it. And while it's never going to feel super fluid or anything, it does take you out of the experience less and less over the course of the game. Also, you hear that sound? I hope you're not too annoyed by that sound because it does not stop the entire game. I didn't find it annoying, but I can definitely see how some people might. But the constant sound of Mega Man's footsteps aside, the opening tutorial actually does a really, really good job of having a tense atmosphere. At the moment, Mega Man's Mega Buster is just a little pea shooter, and the enemies, called Reaverbots, tend to hit pretty hard. The oppressive feeling of being underground in an ancient ruin is compounded by the fact that whatever ancient civilization that built these ruins really liked the aesthetic of eyes. So it makes you feel like you're constantly being watched. All of that tension culminates in a boss fight with a one-armed giant robot that reacts to you the same way I do to bugs in my apartment. When you beat the boss, you finally make it out into the bright, glorious sun. But don't count your robot chickens before they robot hatch, because the boss isn't quite done with you yet. At which point Megaman pulls off a move that I thought was badass when I was a kid, and still think is badass now. I defy you to tell me otherwise.
See ya. Hold on! We're taking off! Roger!
Now we get to meet the voice on the radio. This is Roll. It's her goal in life to find the legendary treasure, the Mother Lode. It's also her goal to find her parents who went missing when she was a child. She will achieve neither of these things in this game. After escaping from the jaws of death, they are immediately thrown into a bigger, angrier jaws of death. As the Flutter, their ship is called the Flutter by the way, begins to break down and they have to land on the closest island, an island called Cadillacs. Meet your new hub world, everybody! During the crash, we are introduced to the rest of the main hero group. You'll notice that each of them has an equivalent from the original Mega Man games. Mega Man is Mega Man, Roll is Roll, Professor Barrel is Dr. Light, and Data is also there. Actually, no, I don't want to sell Data short. I'd like to take a moment to explain to the audience that I would fucking die for this dancing robot monkey. Just look at him! Look at him go! He's also the only way that you can save the game. Plus, whenever you're lost and don't know what you're supposed to do next, you can always ask him what to do and he'll be able to give you helpful hints on where to go. He's a multifunctional dancing talking monkey! Where was I? Right! Painful fiery death! By some miracle of God, we somehow managed to survive the crash. Professor Barrel says it might be a good idea to head into town. Naturally, within 3 seconds of arriving, we are immediately accosted by the police. Alright guys, standard protocol. We were just passing through, we don't know where the drugs came from, and if anybody asks, my name is Pierre-Francois. The cops take the professor away to have a nice friendly chat with their nightsticks, but not before telling us that we are not allowed to enter into the city. Well, you know what I have to say to that? Fuck the police! Wait, hold on. Fuck the wait, hold on. Get in there, come on, and yeah! Fuck the police! In order to kill some time until the feds are done interrogating the professor in a poorly lit, soundproof room, the group decides to help out this married couple that owns a junk shop that is somehow still in business on this tiny island. The husband went down into the ruins without even so much as a Mega Buster, so he's gotten himself cornered by Reaverbots. I love this guy's run. Dude's got excellent form. When you return to the junk shop, as a thank you for saving her husband's worthless hide, they give you their old car. Yep, that's a free car if I've ever seen one. For real though, these guys are actually really sweet and will sell you a bunch of different weapons and upgrades throughout the game. Speaking of which, let's talk about the upgrade mechanic in this game. Basically, the way it works is that your Mega Buster has 4 different stats. Attack, how much damage it does, range, how far it fires, rapid, how fast it fires, and energy, how many shots it fires per round. Hidden throughout the ruins on the island are various upgrades that you can equip to Mega Man to adjust these stats. In addition to upgrading the Buster, you will also find parts that you can combine to create new weapons to equip to Mega Man on his other arm or various parts of his armor. Some of these weapons are really useful, like the landmines or the missile launcher. And then there are others, like the blade arm that forces you to get close to enemies that can hurt you on contact, and a shield that blocks some attacks, and I'll let you figure out which ones. And a vacuum cleaner. That's just a vacuum cleaner. Luckily, you don't need to use anything to make your first additional weapon. That's given to you automatically, as is your Citizen's ID, which allows you to finally enter into the city. Boom! Segue! It's announced that pirates are preparing to attack the city. Roll is worried about the professor.
I'm worried about Gramps. I hope he'll be okay.
Oh, he's as good as dead, Roll. You need to accept that and move on. But someone's gotta identify the body, so I'll go ahead and head into town. Once you enter town, you meet one of the primary antagonists, who, fun fact, also happens to be one of the first fictional crushes I ever remember having, as well as her entourage of servbots. Quick question about the servbots. Are they alive, or are they just robots? Because if they're alive, why do they look like Lego Man? And if they're robots, why does it seem like they actually feel it when you hurt them and experience emotional distress? Why is that a feature they have?
Why? Why was I programmed to feel pain?
Much to my complete shock, Professor Barrel has not been put on a pike as an example to others, but instead is having a lovely time catching up with an old friend of his, who just so happens to be the mayor. When asked about the inevitable pirate attacks, he says,
I'll bet anything they're after the legendary treasure supposedly buried on this island.
Really? There's a legendary treasure on this island that we, noted treasure hunters, have crash-landed on? What are the fucking odds? We then save the lovely Tron Bon from a vicious hound. Naturally, Tron begins falling for our young hero, and who can blame her? He's just so charismatic and charming and brimming with personality. And look at that. Once we get back to our junker and tell Roll what's happened and that we have absolutely nothing to worry about in regards to pirates, the pirates attack.
Gramps is still in there. Megaman, I'm going to go make sure he's all right.
Yeah, you do that, Roll. I'm sure the fleet of robot pirates will quake in terror at the unarmed 14-year-old girl. We high-five Data on the way into town, and we find Roll has been stopped by the police.
Those pirates have attacked the island. Just like they said they would.
You know, in retrospect, we really should have set up some sort of defense or actually done literally anything about it, but hey, hindsight's 20/20, you know how it is. Since we're the protagonist, we run off and try to save the island all on our own.
What can a single boy possibly do?
Save the fucking world if pressed.
Right about now, you get to see this game flex the biggest muscle it has. Its boss battles. Every single boss battle in this game is an absolute joy to fight. It's fun and challenging without being overly frustrating. That's something the Mega Man series has always excelled at, regardless of what specific series it is. In this pre-boss battle, the Bonds have locked the gate leading to further into the City Hall district. The key is held by one of these serve-bots and is passed around throughout the battle. It's your job to figure out which one has the key, take it out, and grab it. Each of these tanks fights a little bit differently too. One of them has a higher attack, one of them moves faster, and the other one has significantly higher health bar. Each one offers a unique challenge and also gives you a good opportunity to really take your new landmines out for a spin. After you beat the serve-bots, they report to Tron, and she steps in to take on Mega Man herself. This cutscene contains two of my favorite things in this game. One, the music track We Are the Bonds, which is not only my favorite track on this OST, which by the way is already filled with some amazing songs, and two, this specific line.
Your history! You're toast! Just you wait!
This is when we get to our first real boss battle, and it's super challenging and can push you to your limits if you don't know what you're doing. When I was a kid, I distinctly remember getting super hung up on this boss fight, which is a shame, because the longer the fight goes on, the more destruction takes place in this residential district, which I think is a super cool feature. You're seeing the results of you taking too long to defeat the villain, so it encourages you to find the most effective and efficient way of beating them. After all, you don't want to pull a Man of Steel or anything. The fight with Tron Bon is immediately followed by a fight with Bon Bon. Much like before, there is a pre-boss fight in which you have to fight several of his Servbot minions, who are all trying to destroy as much property as possible. It's your job to stop the Servbots from destroying City Hall.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you see this? The City Hall is catching fire!
Yes, I know, I'm working on it, but this fight offers a new level of challenge, as this is the first time you've had to experience flying enemies.
You there! Those robots are being deployed by a flying carrier! You should go after that first if you want to stop them!
Yes, I know. I was just saying that. If you don't defeat them quickly, they will drop in more of the tanks, and if you don't defeat the tanks in time, they will—
The fire seems to be spreading.
I'm working on it. If you don't defeat the tanks in time, they will tear down City Hall, so it really becomes a balancing act of trying to take down the flyers while also making sure—
Can our hero save the mayor in time?
You know what? You think it's so easy? You freaking do it! I'm going home! God! After you defeat his minions, you fight Bon Bon, who appears to be a giant robot baby? But Tron and Teasel call him their brother. So— And then we beat him so bad his body explodes and his head goes flying. let's not focus on the fact that we may or may not have just committed infanticide and celebrate the fact that we just saved City Hall and the mayor. Yay! Once we've made sure she's alright, Roll says that she's fixed up the car and— Sweet robot Jesus! That took you, what, half an hour? Tops? But no time to think about how the hell Roll managed to defy the laws of time and physics, because it looks like the pirates haven't given up yet. Teasel Bond, the supposed leader of the group, is digging straight into the ruins since he couldn't get the key from the mayor. The police launch an assault on Teasel and his goons, but they may as well be packing water balloons for all the good their weapons are doing, so, of course, we go to help. Teasel's fight is also really fun, if a bit too reliant on platforming, which oddly enough isn't very good in this Megaman game, but we do eventually get the upper hand.
What? But it's inconceivable!
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Again, credit to the actor who plays Teasel and the animation team, cause you honestly feel super bad for the guy after you beat him.
How much does he think it cost to build that in the first place? I'm gonna get him, if it's the last thing I ever do.
Master Teasel, are you alright? Master Teasel?
But we did it. We saved the town. We're even rewarded by the mayor with a license that allows us to go into even more valuable ruins. Well, thank you, Mayor. That's really very kind of.
And I hate to mention this, but if while you're digging you find anything of value, it would mean a lot to us if you could donate it to help with the restoration of the city.
Wait, what? Why do I have to put in money from my own pocket to get the repairs done? I'm the one who saved the city in the first place. I prevented you from having to build the entire city from the ground up. How's that for a contribution? Don't you have taxes to help pay for it? If you don't, I'm surprised the city wasn't as good of a condition as it was. Man, their economy has to be fucked. We're probably the first new money that's come into this island in years. Now that we've beaten the bonds, there's really nothing pressing to do at the moment, which lets us explore the town a bit more. You know, really take in the sights. We can play some minigames at the TV station. A bunch of optional dungeons just opened up if we feel like getting some parts for weapons and armor, and we can get viciously mauled over and over by mongrel dogs in Old Town. You know, really get a full catalog's experience. When you feel ready, you can enter into the first major dungeon. This dungeon does a really good job of setting up the oppressive atmosphere of the underground. The first thing you see when you enter the dungeon is your goal, but you can't get it yet because of the energy shielding around it. The goal is set in front of you, and the steps to take that goal, finding all the keys, is clearly established. The dungeon is filled with enemies who hit like a freight train, but can only reach you if you screw up and fall down to their level. It really helps drive up the tension of the gameplay, all of which culminates when you finally reach the refractor.
Nothing's happening?
Oh man, I love it. It really fucks with your sense of anticipation, because it's already been established that when valuable refractor is taken, some Indiana Jones shit starts to go down. So the whole time you're expecting something to happen, and then nothing does. Ugh, I love it. While going through that dungeon, you will more than likely pick up an upgrade piece that doubles Mega Man's jump height. Suddenly, a whole new level of exploration opens up to you. When I got this super jump, I went down into the dungeons that I had already picked clean, because now I can reach areas I couldn't before. We now, once again, have some downtime if we want it, and a lot of stuff has just opened up to us thanks to the increased jump. One of my favorite things about this game is how lived in the world is. If you take the time to talk to the NPCs, you see them grow and deal with their own problems they face in day-to-day life. And while you're talking to these NPCs, you may come across various side quests that you can do for various rewards, like encouraging a paraplegic girl to get better basically by telling her to walk it off, helping teenagers score some porn, assisting a struggling artist by providing her with red lipstick to use on her painting instead of just buying red paint like a normal person, the goddamn psycho. You know, I'm starting to suspect this island is populated entirely by nutjobs. Nah, I'm probably reading too much into it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to help a one-eyed sailor repair a submarine that he keeps around his dock for some reason while he acts increasingly creepy towards an underage girl.
I'm glad I could get someone as pretty as you to fix my boat for me.
Wait, with the ship fixed, you can now go out into the water and access the next major dungeon. But it seems like the Bonds have regrouped and are now going to be fighting you all at once in a brand new aquatic mech. Wait, did they build that just so they could fight me on the water and then just wait for days at a time hoping that I might eventually show up?
I knew our little blue boy'd show up. I figured we'd run into him sooner or later if we waited here.
Oh. Huh. I guess they did. Is it weird that I'm flattered? Once again, this boss starts with having to fight off a fleet of Reaver bots before taking on the big bad. MLG pro tip, the big boss is going to kick your ass at first. When it gives you the option to retreat, take it. The only thing that will happen is that you will go back to shore, get fully healed, and then you can start the fight from the midpoint. There is literally no downside to doing this. Once we defeat the Bonds, we enter into the next major dungeon, or as I like to call it, the don't bother fighting anything because it's not fucking worth it dungeon. Just like the last one, the tension is high. Ominous atmosphere, enemies that can't be hurt by conventional means, the same enemies that hit like a fire truck but are invisible this time, all good stuff. You'll eventually reach the much larger red refractor. But just like last time, nothing happens when you take it. Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of nice. We don't have to worry about, fuck. I love how this game fucks with your expectations. First, there's some intense action when you take a refractor. Then, nothing happens with the next one. Then, for the last one, you think nothing is going to happen, and then it hits you with one of the hardest bosses in the game. Which it is. I mean it. Aside from another boss that we'll discuss later, this guy is a pain in the ass. He's completely invulnerable except for his head, which you may or may not have noticed is really high up and is difficult to hit. So when you do jump high enough to hit it, only a couple shots will be made. Now it's starting to feel like a classic Megaman game. So you're constantly circle strafing and jumping and shooting, and by the end of it your hand becomes a twisted pretzel around your controller. And I kinda love it. With this new red refractor, we finally get the flutter working, which means we can access the ruin that Teasel was trying to access earlier, but we couldn't because of all of his digging. Because apparently no one owns a goddamn ladder on this island! While exploring the ruin, Roll asks Megaman if he's ever wondered where Reaver bots come from, who built them, and why. Shortly after she asks this question, we are assaulted by, hold up! You're telling me that people have been digging around in these ruins for years, fighting off giant killer robots that attack on sight that have the same symbol on them as the ruins. For years, all in search of a motherlode that may or may not exist, and no one, not one single person, has ever bothered to research into these robots to find out why they exist and who built them. If I had gone into a ruin and been attacked by a giant robot trying to stomp me like a bug, that would have been question number fucking 1. Anyway, after she asks this stupid question, we are assaulted by 3 robot dogs. Still somehow less intimidating than the dogs in Old Town. Once we get to the end of the dungeon, Megaman uses the code that he reads off the monitor to open up the doors to the main gate, a large, imposing structure that previously had no way to enter it. Megaman wonders to himself how it was that he was able to read the script, despite the fact that it's in a language that he's never seen before. We leave the ruin and head back to our usual parking spot and... Wait, hold up. What time is it? 3 o'clock? Good. It's about time for the Bonds to attack us again. You begin fighting their dreadnought, and at first it seems super easy. It isn't until they bust out this Zord-ass looking mech that the battle begins to get challenging. But the thing that's the most consistent across all Mega Man games, regardless of series, is that once you recognize the pattern of the boss, it becomes relatively easy. The only difficult part, really, is how fast it moves. It's difficult to get a hit on. But once you beat it, you get a, frankly, kind of heartbreaking scene with the Bonds, where they accept their defeat and their inevitable death.
I'm sorry, Teasel. I lost.
Don't worry your pretty little head over it, Tron. We tried our best, but sometimes your best isn't good enough. We lost fair and square. That's life.
this leads me into something I've been wanting to talk about throughout this entire review. What exactly is the difference between the Bonds and our heroes? Because, honestly, I don't see that much of one. Both groups have the exact same goal: get lots of money by plundering the ruins. Both groups have a passionate love and devotion to their family. The only real difference I see is that one group demanded the keys to the ruin while the others didn't. But the latter group wouldn't have been able to get the keys without the former group messing stuff up. If the Bonds never showed up and attacked City Hall, Megaman and company would have never been given permission to enter into the ruins. Otherwise, they would have been in the exact same position as the Bonds are in now. A group of treasure hunters wanting to go into ruins they have no permission to go into. So, what makes us better? What makes us the heroes and them the villains? You know, aside from being on the front of the box, I mean. Hell, they're such sympathetic villains that even Megaman and Roll feel bad about having to take them down. It honestly is a really sad and touching scene. A sad and touching scene that is almost completely cheapened by finding out they're alive 20 minutes later, but I'm getting ahead of myself. With the main gate open, we enter and find out that we need 3 keys to get into the Inner Sanctum, but in order to get to the bottom of this dungeon, each key is hidden in a smaller dungeon that are hidden throughout the island. And is anyone else tired of hearing me say the word dungeon? Eventually we find our way up to Old Town, where we find the Bonds, still alive, and just laying low in an abandoned warehouse. Somehow, I still don't know how, they managed to scrap together the parts and resources in order to build another giant robot to fight you. And you think to yourself, well, this is just another fight with the Bonds, so it won't be that difficult. It is roughly around that time that the Bonds will hand you your ass. This is the boss I was talking about earlier. This robot is easily the hardest boss in the game. I can only imagine how much more impossible it would be if those fucking dogs were still running around. He's relentless. He has a very narrow weak spot to hit and will knock you on your ass. The only advantage you have is that he is not fast, and you have all of Old Town to use as your cover. Once you do defeat the Bond's final robot, you have another sweet scene with Teasel. You finally tell him your name, and he tells you that it actually feels good to be defeated. That it feels good to know that there are still people out there who can best him. And they part on surprisingly good terms. But as he walks away, Teasel shows that he's true to form, and is only using Megaman to get to the main treasure, proving once again that the Bonds are way cooler than Megaman could ever hope of being. After fighting through various mysterious underground cities, you eventually get all 3 keys, and open up the Inner Sanctum of the main gate. Now, I've been pretty complimentary of this game so far, right? I feel like I've been singing its praises and how much I enjoy it. Well, it's at this point that I run into the biggest complaint I have about this game, and that is the total juxtaposition in tone from this point on to the rest of the game. Throughout the game, we have been playing as plucky treasure hunters, helping out the townsfolk who live here and fighting funny sky pirates who use little Lego people as their foot soldiers. But then, all of a sudden, at hour 9 of a 9.5-hour long game, you meet the real main antagonist, Megaman Juno. Juno, with cold calculation, decides that they want to kill every single human on this planet using an ancient superweapon called Eden. Juno wants Megaman to help them with this, as that is apparently what Megaman was designed to do. Because due to Megaman's never-before-touched-upon amnesia, he has forgotten that he's apparently a robot specifically designed for the sole purpose of planet-wide genocide. But since he refuses to assist Juno, he is instead going to be tortured with electricity, using his circuits to overload him and kill him. That feeling you're currently experiencing is called tonal whiplash. It's like if in Pokemon, Ash had been fighting Team Rocket the entire time, but in the last season, suddenly he has to fight the fucking Witch King of Angmar. Here's the thing that bugs me the most about the Juno... I can't even call it a plot twist, it's more like just a complete changing of the tracks. Juno isn't even mentioned as a possibility of the true Big Bad until the last half of the last dungeon. Neither is Megaman's supposed amnesia. The only thing that might constitute as foreshadowing is this mural in the museum. Unless you count Roll and the mayor saying that something big is coming, but that's it. It comes completely out of nowhere. It would be like If in Final Fantasy IX, you spent 40 hours fighting against one major villain, only to have a completely new and never mentioned enemy be the final boss. Alright, fine, bad example. The point is, who the hell is Juno to us? The bonds have been established as a rival to Megaman, a constant obstacle that prevents us from moving forward. The ones putting their lives in danger for their own selfish ambitions. The same selfish ambition we have, but that's not the point I'm trying to make right now. Fighting their giant robots constantly is repetitive. Sure, so what if the final confrontation was having to fight them themselves? Maybe with some beefed up weapons and armor to make it more of a fair fight, but fighting them physically. I feel like that would have been a more satisfying conclusion to the narrative than this complete unknown. And I'm not saying Juno can't be an effective villain. Their cold, calculating, and clearly feigned friendly demeanor is legitimately intimidating. And I do like the idea of a secret force behind the scenes that is far more imposing and menacing than we could have imagined working on their own agenda. I just think they could have handled it a bit better. But as for the Mega Man Juno fight itself, it's pretty good. I remember having a bitch of a time with it when I was a kid, but now, as long as you depend on your best friend circle strafing and you just never stop shooting, they go down with relative ease. Juno has two forms. Their normal form, in which they jump around the room trying to squash you and shoot lasers, and a second form that I called when I was a kid, and still do, Mega Man Juno Centipede. The hardest part of this fight is the enormous balls of energy they throw at you that are very difficult to dodge. Fun story, I beat Juno and thus the game for the first time when I was playing on N64 before school in the morning. I beat the boss and was super proud and excited to watch the ending cutscene, but then I had to go to school. I tried to explain to my mom that I needed to watch the ending cutscene because it took me forever to beat Juno. And she was not sympathetic to my pleas, and I ended up having to beat Juno again just so I could watch the ending. Speaking of that ending, while Juno lies dying on the floor, they reveal that they never actually thought that they'd be able to defeat Mega Man. They were just stalling for time because they had already launched Eden before Mega Man even entered the room.
I'm not a comic book villain. Do you seriously think I'd explain my masterstroke to you if there were even the slightest possibility you could affect the outcome? I triggered it 35 minutes ago.
All hope seems lost until...
Interrupt command! Priority command rerouted to Purifier First Class
Oh, hey, Data, what's up?
Under suspicion of malfunction,
Wait, what?
Bureaucratic Model 3rd Class Juno has been deactivated by Megaman.
Hold up. We need to unpack this. So it turns out that Mega Man's lost memories aren't actually lost, but are actually stored inside Data. Not only that, but Data was designed by Mega Man years ago as a storage unit for his memories, specifically so that he couldn't be scanned by some entity known as Mother. That is actually a super clever plot twist, and I kind of fucking love it. Now, some of you may be wondering why it is that I love the Data plot twist but hated Juno's. Well, easy. Because the Data plot twist was set up. No, not out loud, and not through the narrative, but through gameplay. Data has been with you this entire game, and not only has been a helpful companion in giving you good advice, but he's also the one you save at. He's literally been storing your memories this entire time. This is why I wanted to review Mega Man Legends as my second game review. Link to the Past may have been my very first video game I ever played, but Mega Man Legends was the first game that ever showed me that video games could be more than just fun. They can be impactful. Video games can convey a narrative in a way that no other media can. Through action. Through the action of the player. Having what the player does be an impact on the world they live in. The Data plot point may not seem like much to you, but to me, it was the beginning of my beliefs that video games aren't just entertainment. They have the capacity to be something more. To leave a mark on the player experiencing them. But we did it. We defeated Mega Man Juno and saved not only Cadillac's, but the world. With the threat we didn't know was there defeated and our airship recovered, it's time we finally said our goodbyes to all the people of the island who helped us, and who we barely touched on in this review because I couldn't find a way to squeeze them in. Goodbye, junk store couple. Thank you for selling me a bunch of stuff and for showing me some sweet running techniques. Goodbye, Inspector. Sorry that I won't be around to do your fucking job for you anymore. Goodbye, weird pirate pedophile. I hope that I never see you within 500 feet of me or Roll ever again. It actually is kind of sad leaving Cadlock's Island. You spent so much time there, getting to know the people, exploring its secrets, going on a lot of adventures, and hey! The fuck did I say about the 500 feet, old man? After the credits roll, we see a short little scene of the Bonds trailing behind a flutter and a beat-up old ship, and with them is the enormous rainbow refractor that you saw in the main gate. So, they finally get what they wanted all along, which is nice. I'm glad even the antagonists, who are way more lovable, get a happy ending. And thus concludes Megaman Legends. So, to answer the question posed at the beginning of the review, does Megaman Legends hold up after all these years? Honestly, not only does it hold up, it really holds up. It's just as fun as I remember. While the controls are a bit hard to get the hang of at first, once you do, it's a blast to play and explore. The Bonds are a super fun Team Rocket-esque villain group, and every cutscene with them is an absolute joy to watch. And while I don't like the ending bit, it did do a good job of establishing intrigue for sequels, and trust me, we will be talking about the sequel at some point. And also, I know I barely touched on it, but the soundtrack is super great and catchy. The animation and the voice acting are both super solid too, especially for the time. All in all, I highly recommend the game. If you can't get it on PS1 or N64, and really, who can blame you? It is available on the PlayStation Store for a price that is well worth it. Go ahead, give it a try. I guarantee you, you won't be disappointed.